O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
Oh, hey, everyone. Episode 96. Coming right at you from Bozeman, Montana. It's me and Phil the engineer here in early January. We're going to wind down the best of THC. So thank you. I know there's a lot of people out there, I'll just be honest, that when you see a best of show, you just don't listen. I do that sometimes. But I hope you listen to these last three, and I hope you're listening to this one right now. Because we want to celebrate a little bit of what we've done in the last couple of years, and while we're doing that, we're sitting back here and planning for 2020, all the cool things we want to bring you, all the great guests, all the good topics. So hopefully we'll live up to your expectations in 2020. And as I said, I'm having a child, so kind of busy with that. We'll be back and better than ever very soon. But before we get to the show today, we got to talk to you about the Meat Eater Off the Air live tour. Join Steve Rinella, Giannis Patelis, Ryan Callahan, and friends for an evening you won't see or hear anywhere else. And that just means it's not going to be recorded. There's nowhere else you can get this entertainment than in the theater with these boys in 11 cities coming this year. San Francisco, Portland, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Boston, Detroit, Minneapolis, Chicago, D.C., Pittsburgh. Whew! 11 cities altogether. So if you want to get tickets, they go on sale Friday, January 17th. But they are available exclusively to the Meat Eater community beginning Tuesday, January 14th at 10 a.m. Use the promo code MUGS wherever you're buying your tickets, and you'll get them. There's also one more thing to know. There's exclusive meet and greet signing opportunities available for VIP ticket holders. There's only 65 tickets per show, so get on that ASAP if you want to meet the crew and greet the crew. We're excited for that as a company, and we'll see you on the road. Now, episode 96.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. When I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels. Oh, number 7.
Hey, everybody. Episode 96 coming at you. We are here, and we're ready for the last best of THC. Phil, I'm going to ask you just one more time. How you feeling, buddy?
I'm doing great. Got a cup of coffee. Recording a couple podcasts today, which is my job.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Doing your job is what you're saying. 9 to 5.
Drinking
I get
coffee,
up,
doing
I do
my job, going home.
Well, listen, I've been thinking a lot lately about, we've been thinking about 2020 and what we're going to do. How we're going to be different. You know, as a podcast, when your job is to do something every week, I personally stress a lot about what we're going to do, how we're going to be different, how we're going to be better, how we're going to push forward. And this is a great time for the show to do that. So before we get any further into what we're going to do today, I want to tell you guys right into THC@themeateater.com. This would be a nice time just to tell us how you're feeling about what we've done thus far, how you're feeling about 2020, what's the most pressing issue in your world, what do you want to see us cover, who do you want us to talk to, where do you want us to go? Because it's an open book right now, and this is the time to push this show in the direction you want it to go. A lot of you guys write in, a lot of you guys leave reviews, negative, positive, whatever. We appreciate all of them. Oh, most all of them, Phil. We appreciate most all of them.
I appreciate all of them.
Yeah. Phil likes all of them.
Yeah.
They all make him laugh. But it is important to us to get the feedback from you. So, little blocking and tackling here, THC@themeateater.com. Write in. Let us know what you're thinking, what you're burning on in 2020. We will do our best to tackle all of that here on the show. So, we've already been talking about this the last couple episodes. I am expecting a child. Now, I thought maybe the child would have come by now into the world, Phil, but the child has not. So, we still have a couple of days, we think, before the event. So I wanted to just briefly touch on fatherhood, and I think what we're going to do when my son is born, my dad is going to be in town, or might come in this room right after he's born and just reflect a little bit more in depth on fatherhood, because I think it's an important part of my life. Phil, it's an important part of your life. Fatherhood or motherhood or just being a parent is an important part of all of our lives. And so those of you that have children, and those of you that want to have children, we got folks like Ryan Callahan, who just is essentially a single man for life, as he's told us. And I'm happy for him. The man's living the dream a lot of ways. But being a parent's a lot of things. And I think for me, as I prepare to have my second child, it changes a lot of the ways that I think about my son, James, my wife, my family, and like, where do you find your joy? Here's how I'm going to go. I'm going to get deep on you, Phil. You ready for this?
I love it when you do this.
Yeah. It's like my Dr. Phil moment. Like, where do you find your joy? Like, I've traveled around. I've done a lot of amazing things in my life. I've spent a lot of time doing things that not a lot of people get to do, and I find joy in those places outside. I mean, I've been to some of the craziest mountain ranges in the world. I've hunted some of the weirdest and wildest animals you'd ever see at the ends of the earth. And not to be too melodramatic about where I've been, but I've found joy in those wild places. But the coolest thing that I've ever done is find joy just with the people that I love and the people that really matter. And I think fatherhood then for me becomes this singular joy, because it doesn't need to be far-flung. It doesn't need to be wild and crazy and eventful. It can just be what it could be, that simple joy in your life. And if you can find joy in the craziness that is being a parent, white diapers and tantrums and all the things that toddlers bring into your life, if you find some joy in all of it, then you can find that simple pleasures become important for you. And so for me, at the end of the day, fatherhood, as I prepare for number 2, is about putting the best of me into my family, into that part of my life. And it feels pretty good at the end of the day knowing that while it's always a struggle, if you do good at that part, if you do good at that job, if you excel at that, then it's a long-lasting effect on our world. So if you're a parent, or if you want to be a parent, it's a good time to be thinking about that. I certainly am right now. You got any parenting philosophies you want to throw out there, Phil?
Not really. I haven't. It's stuff that I've thought about, but I have never really put into words before. But I think you did a pretty good job. It's kind of crazy how world shaking becoming a parent is.
It really is. You never. Yeah, I used to look around at people that had kids when I didn't have kids. I'm like, well, how are you here right now?
Yeah.
Don't you have somewhere else to be? How could you be here when that's going on? And for me, if I was being flat honest, prior to having a child, I never really thought it would happen for me. I just didn't know. I don't know if I didn't know if I earned it or if I deserved it. I didn't know if I would be good at it. But now that I am in that situation, I very much relish the opportunity to succeed and fail again at being a parent, and just it keeps life interesting. That's for sure. And it's, I think, what's really important. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. And hopefully pretty soon you'll be seeing some little content about the new little guy in my life. And we'll be moving on to 2020. So thanks for sticking with me as we talk a little bit about fatherhood and where I am in life. And now we're going to get to the rest of episode 96. And the reason why I think this is the perfect way to end the best of is because I think in a lot of ways the three folks you're going to hear from today are going to have those long-lasting effects on our world and the hunting community and all of the things that we love to do, all the pursuits we love to take part in. Colonel Tom Kelly, Jim Posewitz, Valerius Geist. All three of those guys have had indelible stamps on hunting and the outdoors and nature and all those things. First up, you're going to hear Jim Posewitz. Jim is the author of Beyond Fair Chase. That's a book. If you haven't read it, go read it. And if you don't know anything about Jim Posewitz, please stick around and go listen to after we're finished this episode, go listen to his full episode of the Hunting Collective. He's a legend. He's getting up there in years, but what he's done for hunting and how we think about it, how we reason it, how we value it has been immeasurable. So I greatly respect that man. He actually shed a few tears in that episode when telling a story about generational hunting. And Valerius Geist shed some tears when talking about a moose, a pet moose. And Colonel Tom Kelly shed some tears when talking about his late wife. And so beyond Posewitz, we have, like I just said, Colonel Tom Kelly, the turkey hunting's poet laureate, a Southern genteel colonel that has so many things to say. It could spin a yarn, as they say, as well. And then we're going to end it with the legendary author of the North American Model of Wildlife Conservation. His name is Valerius Geist, Dr. Valerius Geist. He came in here and absolutely wowed us. The jaw-dropping person, full of energy, as is Colonel Kelly, as is Jim Posewitz. They wouldn't be to where they are in life without that just singular energy that they have. So I want you to enjoy these three people. Know that they have lived, they're getting up there in years. They've lived long, productive lives. And if I were to make a goal for folks to emulate these three gentlemen, would be right up there, both professionally, personally, and on and on. So without further ado, enjoy Mr. Jim Posewitz.
I guess I grew up on an older road, a pedal to the metal.
Take us through why ethics for you, why after all this time spent in the hunting community, the conservation community, why ethics was important to you, why fair chase was something that was a pillar in your life, and why you felt the need to address it at that point.
Okay. I'm leaving fishing game in the 80s, late 80s. I'm wrapping things up kind of. That's when I had gone back to Washington, D.C. That's when we were killing every buffalo that set foot outside of Yellowstone National Park. And that's when hunting was being vilified, coast to coast.
Yeah, and this is kind of like the pinnacle of the hunting participation at some level in the mid-'80s when it was really...
And I guess I was aware of the conservation side of what the hunters were sponsoring. And that story was not being told by anybody. And so I came back and we started the Governor's Symposium series on the North American hunting heritage under Stan Stevens' first term as governor. And we started talking about, what's wrong with us and what's right about us as hunters. And we held 7 national conferences in the process. And of course, that when you got to start inviting speakers and become a speaker and stuff, you have to start doing some studying.
Did you remember, it strikes me though, do you remember when you say that you want to, what's right with us and what's wrong with us? That's a pretty heavy statement for me. Do you remember back in time to why that you wanted to explore those things, particularly what's wrong with us?
Well, what's wrong with us was, I guess the consummate thing was how we were treating the buffalo
Yeah.
coming out of Yellowstone Park. Everyone setting foot in Montana was to be shot. And that was so alien to the conservation ethic that had restored abundance of wildlife clear across the state of Montana that I stumbled into, in the middle of a deer recovery boom of the 1950s. Yes. I was no great hunter. I mean, deer were everywhere. And to start adding, things up, and just why a person is even inclined to go out in pursuit of whether it was a or a cottontail rabbit or a pheasant or a ruffed grouse. I mean, that was my total bag as a hunter before coming to Montana, was a couple of cottontail rabbits in an apple orchard, because the orchard guy didn't like them nipping out the bases of his trees.
They were probably pretty good tasting rabbits.
Exactly. Although my mother was quite puzzled what to do with it.
Did you find yourself to be unique in that in the thoughts you were having around the examining the why or the ethics?
No, and here I tend to maybe make some stuff up, because the competition for the hunter's attention had turned to, did you get your limit? How big was your buck? And it still persists. I'm glad I never measured any of my animals.
Yes.
Just won't do it, because it's just degrading. And then you realize, whoa, there's more here to that. And I had a consummate experience, after all the stuff, it's 25 years with the Sinvar Foundation funding conservation, environmental protection, wildlife restoration, and then 15 years with Orion. And what that adds to the personal experience becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
And a couple of seasons ago, I'm stumbling up into, we used to live 8 miles south of town, and just out the back door did lots and lots of hunting. But I go to an old familiar place in the dark, and I sit there because Gail's coming up the other side.
Your wife.
Yeah, and she's liable to, start some elk out. So I'm sitting in one of the passes where they sometimes go.
As the hunter is known to do.
So I'm sitting there in the pre-dawn, and I'm looking down the trail I came in. What looks like a father and 2 sons come walking up the trail. And I'm just sitting there. Excuse me. The father sees me, and he halts the boys. And they're like poster children out of Hunter Education magazine. I mean, they're control of their weapons, undivided attention, standing there quietly in the background. And the father tiptoes up to this old guy sitting in the woods. And the father says, "We don't want to get ahead of you." He whispers it to me. And I look, and I'm thinking, here I'm sitting on the national forest, public lands, in pursuit of a restored wildlife population that's available to anybody. And the first 3 guys I meet want to defer to me.
Yeah.
And I said to and I'm thinking of Theodore Roosevelt talking about the generations within the womb of time, is what he called us. Well, there were 3 generations right there. This old guy, me, the father, and 2 sons, what I took to be 2 sons.
Yeah.
And I look at the situation, and I say back to the father, "I think I know what I see here, and I want you ahead of me." And then he says, "The youngest boy can shoot a cow if he sees one." And I give him a smile and a thumbs up, and the kid's face lights up in the dark with excitement of that moment. And in his anticipation, his excitement, and just, again, I lean on Roosevelt. We do these things for the economic well-being of the people, but there is more. They also add to the beauty of living and therefore the joy of life. And there I was looking at the joy of life shining in the dark.
Yeah.
And I thought, holy mackerel.
Well, and all you've experienced in your life.
Yeah, and then they
having seen
walked
it.
up, and then they walked ahead. I sat there and I bawled. I was so emotionally moved by how this all fits.
Yeah.
And when you see, and these people didn't know any of this stuff, I don't think, but maybe they did, but probably not. But the two boys I know got my book.
Well, I think that your emotion there is built in what you've seen and what in some ways you've shepherded in your life.
Experienced, and to say that buck is a big accomplishment, it's not true.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a big part of, and I think one thing that you've done in your career and that I hope to do, and I'm sure Sam hopes as well, is to carry that torch. It is to understand the history of what came before us and how miraculous the time that we've described in this podcast was for America, and how miraculous that it has lasted for these decades and throughout your life is even more miraculous. That it's amazing to have thought about, you were 1 year old when the early conservationists were coming together to decide the future, and here we are in the future, and there was two boys there that learned something that they to them was likely innate to their family and to the way of life, which wasn't always that way. Yeah.
It wasn't the royal hunting party.
It was not.
These were the real Americans.
And it's democratic in its nature. And I think this spins well into, I think, ethics in hunting.
Oh, I forgot to answer your question.
Well, we'll get there.
Okay.
We got plenty of time. Have a drink. We'll all have a drink. In elevating the conversation of ethics, as you did, there was, and in your book, there's the level of caring about, to me, what struck me was the level of caring about the community of people that you were involved in, but the level of caring about right and wrong for them and that discussion, and as you wrote that book, what's your ultimate goal? Like, would you remember what's in your head is, I'm going to achieve something from this writing, or is it just the conversation that you had within it?
Well, there's, other things going on in a person's life, and in the context of this subject, I had been going to the SHOT Show.
So many parallels here. We're getting ready to go to the SHOT Show.
Right, and here is the commercial extreme, and they're just peddling their stuff, and nothing matters other than to sell the commodity. And the fact that there is an animal involved going to get shot out here does not ever cross that border. And that's the tragedy of the industry, not seeing a more powerful reality than just the antler or the quantity or the locker full of dead fish or whatever it is. But all they're doing is promoting the commerce of it. And, of course, the commerce is what drove it to its knees to begin with.
Sure.
The buffalo hide and just the meat markets. And here we're going right back with this huge engine.
Yeah, boy, isn't that a powerful notion? Like, would we allow that to reverse? Right.
And so where Beyond Fair Chase to try to find another path came from, the publisher of Falcon Press at the time tossed a little copy of a book called The Ethics or the Style of Writing by Strunk and White, Elements of Style, or I forget the exact title of it now, but it was a little tiny paperback book about writing. And he said, I want you to write a book just like this on the ethics of hunting. And I said, okay. I never written anything. Well, I've written articles, but never a book. So I sat down and I just wrote Beyond Fair Chase. One of the things I did right was it wasn't a lister of thou shalts and thou shalt nots, because they're everywhere and they're nowhere.
Yeah, that is true.
It's the tricky thing about ethics.
Yeah, and so I spun 5 stories into the book on relationships between the hunter and the hunted, including that buck there, and
I remember,
and another set in my downstairs from the next year in the same hillside, basically. But at any rate, I drafted it, and there was very little editorial stuff. Oh, and he wanted it called The Little Brown Book on Hunting. Because Chairman Mao had just come out with the Little Red Book.
Little Brown Book on Hunting. That would have lasted as long, but Beyond Fair Chase is a little more
That's
universal.
snappier.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, what I did was I offered to buy a beer for about 4 or 5 members of the Rod and Gun Club that I was a member of. Told them the dilemma that I needed a better title. And at the price of a couple of beers, I got one of the guys, Mike Trevor, said, how about Beyond Fair Chase? And that rang the bell. And so that's where the title came from.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the book, and it has 5 stories. One about the wounded bull, which is one that comes back to me most often. One personal story about when my son passes up an elk because he wants his father to confirm that everything is good.
As we all do.
Yeah, and then in the next season he gets an elk there, and I thought, wow, it all fits.
Yeah.
But at any rate, there's a ton of stories about stories coming back to me.
Yeah.
But that will take a
Long
while.
time.
But at any rate, that's where Beyond Fair Chase came from. And then the breakthrough there was I had been meeting with the International Association of Hunter Educators. Mm-hmm. They were having an annual convention in Des Moines, Iowa. And so I wrote the guy and I said, look, I've got this book and I'd like to tell about it at your convention. I'll take any place on your program that you might be able to fit it in. If somebody cancels or whatever. And he agrees. He said, okay, come on. And he gives me the award banquet speaking spot.
At this point, you probably studied up, yeah.
And my wife, Gail, goes. She's on contract here with Falcon Press at the time to promote the book, sell it. And one of the guys from his staff down there at Falcon Press goes along. We go to Des Moines. I write a speech. And we get into the banquet room, and Gail and Chris, the other guy from Falcon, they set up a table to take orders on the outside of the banquet room. This is the Hotel Fort Des Moines. And I get in here, and here's all these oak walls and beautifully kept historic place. And it occurs to me, because I knew a little bit about conservation history, that Aldo Leopold, Iowan, and Ding Darling, Iowan, and Ding was the first president of the National Wildlife Federation, spoke in that same room. So I threw away my text, and I talked about the echoes of their words that are held in these walls. Yeah. And when that was over, they swamped our pre-order table, and Gail and Chris pre-sold 100,000 copies of Beyond Fair Chase.
Wow.
Oh. And then what'd you tell us before? 700? How many thousands?
It's about 700 now.
Unbelievable. 700,000 copies.
Yeah.
And Sam, what like when you first read it, what did you think? What was your reaction to what you'd read, what Jim had put together?
Well, I think it started getting distributed to hunter education courses probably right after I went through that. So I didn't read it until just a couple years ago when Lantani gave me a copy. Yeah. But was that the one you started with, the story of like killing a sparrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. I mean, I definitely resonated with it immediately, having grown up, with a BB gun in hand, killing all manner.
Yeah, I'd forgotten it. Yeah. You mentioned it now, but yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
Bill Schneider wanted to call it The Little Brown Book on Hunting. I wanted to call it The Sparrow and the Mammoth Hunter.
That's a pretty good title. That's pretty good.
That sounds like a T-shirt.
Yeah, it turned out to be beyond fair chase.
We like it. But yeah, this book becomes a seminal project, and I read it, I think, about 5 years ago. I remember when I first started to, I had been a professional in the industry for years. And when I first started to examine my own actions, and I remember it was around a photo I took of an elk. One of the first elk I ever killed was in the Madison Valley. And we took this photo. The hunt lasted an hour, and the photo shoot lasted 3 hours. Mm-hmm. With this different positions of this elk, and I remember no one taking a photo of us cutting it up, or no one taking a photo of me packing the antlers out, no one taking a photo of me doing anything other than standing around with this dead elk. It's the first elk I've killed. Mm-hmm. And I just remember at some point in that hunt just thinking, I'm not sure what's going on here. Like, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, because at that point I was an editor for a hunting magazine, and companies would invite me out, as you spoke about. It hits home to me. You spoke about like how we've turned hunting into a commodity. We use it to sell things, which changes a lot of the motivation for some hunters in the industry. And I think that was part of what I was struggling with there. It's like, why am I really doing this? Yeah, I'm eating it. Yeah, there's conservation, but what am I doing?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was struggling to get at, Ben, and something I think the ultimate revelation it provided me was it's sometimes not enough just to follow the letter of the law. Just doing what is legal does not completely satisfy our responsibility to this resource. And growing up, I, for the most part, followed the law. There are definitely some waverings there, but I feel like by the time I'd read it, I'd come to agree that game laws were there for a good reason, and that I didn't like to give cops a reason to mess with me. But it really cemented, I think, ideas that I'd already gathered from other works and things that. And I think this is the great beauty of that title, is you need to go beyond what's required of you as a hunter, and make sure that your actions are defensible and beneficial to the resource, and that you do as much for that animal and those populations and those resources.
Yeah.
As much or more than they do for you, and that you have that responsibility, that it's a give and a take.
Yeah. Do you think about your effort to, and then just your own personal feelings on defining the relationship between the hunter and the hunted, like how we feel about animals? How much time have you put into that in your own personal huntings?
Well, it grows with time. I mean, the first thing that I wanted to do with that borrowed gun was to find a dead deer after I sent around that direction.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, and then, of course, it became take care of it. That was kind of an autopilot. That's why I was there. But the more experiences you have, and the more you learn about where you're hunting and the history of the place. You know, the Rocky Mountain Front, of course, is a classic. But that first ranger up there, Ehlers Koch, he spent 30 days in 1905, Forest Service's first year, and 30 days in 1906. And he described what's the Bob Marshall Great Bear Complex now, but he described them by drainage. And in 30 days of hunting each year, he said, I never saw or got a shot at a single game animal except one mountain goat. I mean, you get trampled back there in 60 days now.
Yeah, you would.
But that was the depth to which this slaughter had gone. And he rides in, and he was a conservation-oriented guy, and the front has got a very rich history of people popping up along the way. Sometimes they're in the agency. They made it a wilderness before there was a Wilderness Act. And Sun River Game Preserve was created, and I think it was only one dissenting vote in the Montana State Legislature when that was passed through, start protecting this stuff. And that was from the grassroots rancher from Shoto.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was a businessman, I think, from Shoto, but that we had to do better.
Yeah, had to do better. And you feel like we've done better?
Well, yeah, certainly we've done better. And, of course, now the problem is, again, as wildlife became more abundant and people are more interested in hunting and commerce returns. And then when you've got the critter living private and public, both, you have those conflicts. And those will be issues that your generation is going to have to come to a management scheme that is good for the critter.
Yeah,
that was a question I've had sitting on my list for a while. That, well, I mean, you're moving us in that direction anyway. The fair chase ethic arose around Leopold and Roosevelt and all of those, and by and large, we have recovered a lot of our wildlife in this country. I was just curious to know, from you, how do you approach some of these modern issues of fair chase and hunting ethics? Where do you start when people are talking about, I don't know, like I feel like bear baiting is very much in the modern debate. Some people would say that by putting out bait, you're creating an unnatural situation to chase an animal that may not be fair. Other people would respond that by hunting bears over bait, you have the opportunity to properly sex the bear, make sure you're taking a boar, preferably a mature boar, and you'll have an opportunity to take a good, clean, standing shot. And this is something I struggle with. And I'm just curious, like, having being the guy who wrote the book on fair chase, what's square one? Where do you start when trying to parse these difficult discussions?
Well, you kind of start at midpoint on the spectrum, and at that midpoint is where you accept responsibility both for the taking of that animal that is equal to your responsibility to see to it that that animal was even there. In other words, if you've got to realize that you're just not a freeloader. And I think there's kind of a middle point in a hunter's career where when I borrowed that gun and shot that doe, I didn't even know why she was out there,
right,
or why the land was public. And as that awareness grows, and you don't have to have that all for your first start out of the chute, But when you decide you're going to be a hunter, I think it would really be, well, I know it's to your advantage to start viewing it in the full context of why this could even happen. And that enriches it.
Certainly does.
My best hunt was when I ran into those 3 guys south of town.
Sure.
I didn't even fire a shot or tag anything, or I didn't have to drag anything out. But I had an experience that added to the beauty of living and the joy of life, as Roosevelt called it.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
All right, that's Jim Posewitz for you folks. Really enjoyed that conversation. If you go back and search that episode, you can find the entire thing. It's a couple more hours in there that you didn't get to hear. But the story that Jim tells about running into the father and son on the trail and seeing the passage of time in that interaction and seeing kind of what he has meant to hunting in the eyes of that father and that son has been powerful. He even shed a little tear there during that conversation. So I really just want you to make sure that if you haven't read his work, if you haven't read Beyond Fair Chase, go and do that.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
Speaking of a book you need to read, we got the next guy coming up here, Colonel Tom Kelly. It's going to be, I don't know if it's my favorite podcast, but he's definitely my favorite guest of all time. Colonel Tom Kelly's a legend. I read his book, The 10th Legion, before every hunting season, every spring turkey season. So I'm going to make Phil read it this spring turkey season when you go on your first hunt.
Oh,
I'll
homework.
make you read The 10th Legion.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good homework. You'll like it. Just a little brief bit on what Tom Kelly means to me. People call him turkey hunting's poet laureate, and for good reason. This is a man that can strike at the heart of what a turkey hunter is, and who a turkey hunter is, and why they do what they do. And that's as interesting to me as anything. And when I traveled to Bethesda, Maryland to meet with the guy, it struck me that this part of his life, it's 93 years old. He lives on the 11th floor of a high-rise in Bethesda, Maryland. Outside of his apartment, strip malls, chain restaurants, traffic jams, all the stuff that a hunter doesn't like. And his life there seemed, small, a little bit hollow. As a man whose years have kind of watched go by, his beloved wife, has passed away 2 years prior. Tom moved from his longtime Alabama home up to Maryland, where I met him. And so there was a little bit of sadness in the room for a man that has done so much in his life, a man that has done so many things that will impact all of us. But there's also a beauty in it, because there's a quote that Tom has in his book, The 10th Legion. He says, "You have to pay for every turkey you kill, and the coin you use to pay for them is time." And so at this point, when we drop into this conversation with Tom, he has paid time. He's paid with time. He has used all his coins. It was obvious to me during this conversation that he's reaching the end of his days outside, the end of his days where he can be free, and now he'll soon probably be in a nursing home. He'll soon probably be cared for by a nurse and only be able to leave the room when someone helps him do it. And so, but he still has this patience, this determination. He moved like smoke almost through the apartment. I remember writing that after I met him. He's so deliberate in the way that he moved, because it takes a lot of work to get across the room when you're 93. And so I have a lot of feelings and thoughts looking back on this conversation, but you can get just as much about the man by listening to him speak. So enjoy this little bit with Colonel Tom Kelly. Mr. Kelly, how are you today, Colonel Kelly?
Fine, thank you.
Thanks for joining me and having me into your home here
Enjoyed it.
in Bethesda. There's a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but the first one is, why do you think turkeys was the thing that you became famous for writing about?
The thing that I think really triggered me into it was my wife. We were going someplace, and she said something to me, and she said, I hear you telling all these stories to people about this. You might ought to write that down, and maybe somebody would want to listen to it. And I had no idea about doing anything like that. And I said, all right, I'll try that. And at that time, I had been writing. I had been selling an occasional story to Field and Stream and Outdoor Life, and I used to sell some to the one Sports Illustrated. I used to sell them Sports Illustrated before they fell out of love with killing things, and so I did that, and I started doing it, and then that triggered the whole damn thing. That triggered. To me, I'm not at all interested in big game hunting. I mean, I do not want to. When I hunt something, and this may be cowardice, but when I hunt something, if I lose, I want to lose. I don't want to lose some arms and legs or get my head gnawed off. I don't want to hunt elephants where I'll be trampled by the damn elephant if I do something wrong. Yeah, I'm a hunter, not a sufferer. And that really is what triggered the whole thing more than anything else. And then once it started, the first book I did was 10th Legion. And 10th Legion is, 10th Legion must be in its, I don't know how many editions. I just don't know.
I think it's 20-some.
At
least 20-some. 1973 is when that book came out.
Yeah. And of course that triggered it. And then when that triggered it, and then in hunting you just meet a lot of nice folks.
Yeah.
You really do. You meet a lot of nice folks.
I agree. Yeah. And then, because I think what people love about that book, what I love about that book, is the way you articulated the motivation of the turkey hunter, our relationship with the turkey, and our interactions with the turkey.
Yeah. Well, if somebody would go, I don't have any goddamn idea how many turkeys I've killed. I mean, I've been hunting them since 1938. All right, and when I began to kill turkeys fairly regularly, I wish to God I had kept a journal.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was no more than hunted here and hunted there and hunted this and did that and did the other thing. But, so if I've been hunting turkeys for 50 years, well, more than that
now. Say almost 70 years.
70 years. If I've been hunting turkeys for 70 years and if I've killed 4 or 5 turkeys a year, that's whatever 4 or 5 times 70 is, 3,500, something like that.
Yeah, 350 turkeys, like that.
200 or something.
350, 400 turkeys in your life if we were to round up to it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of interactions with one animal.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I don't care how much you've done it, and I don't care how good you get at it. Every damn year, one of them is going to do something to you, and you're going to think, how in the hell could I have been that damn dumb? It never gets old. Yes. It never, ever gets old.
Do you feel that all turkey hunters have a hubris, have a confidence that you get to a point where you think a bird's going to do something, you think you have him figured out? Like, why do we continue to return to this confidence?
Because we don't. Because he will destroy it. If you get that much confidence, he's going to break your neck with it. One of the marvelous things about doing it. If you told me that I could never kill another turkey, I could still enjoy taking people, because you can take somebody, and a turkey's got one characteristic. He cannot hear a whisper. If you talk like this, you can hear one, and you can sit. When I take somebody hunting, I sit right here behind him.
Yeah.
Where I can look over his shoulder. That way, if he shoots me with the shotgun, he's got to turn it around and take off his boot and pull the trigger with his toe. So, and I ain't going to sit there and wait for him to do that. But if you can whisper him all the way to the gun.
Yeah.
You can say, here he comes. Let him get behind that tree. Now, don't do anything. And you can talk him all the way up there and do it. And you can have if you told me I could never kill another turkey, I've killed enough. I like to eat them. But if you told me if I could never kill another turkey, I could get a pile of enjoyment out of taking other people turkey hunting. Now, as long as I can get about like this.
Yes,
this can't go on. I mean,
you've moved it along more than most folks.
Well, I moved along, but I ain't going to last to 108 or 116. So the end is out there, and just hopefully it'll come quick.
What's the first time you heard a turkey gobble?
First time I heard a turkey gobble, I didn't know what it was. I had an uncle who worked in the shipyard at Pascagoula. And he had a friend named Kennedy. And the Kennedys had 3 boys. They had a boy younger than me, and a boy older than me, and a boy who was my age, Pete. And Pete their daddy worked for my uncle. And their daddy lived just north of Pascagoula, Mississippi, and I lived in Mobile, and I had gone over there to visit my uncle. And Pete and I hit it off together, and he started taking me with him. And that's the first turkey I heard gobble with Pete, and I thought it was a dog barking. It's, and he said, no, that's a turkey. And that triggered it. And from then on out, it's been turkeys all the while.
What about the first time that you made a turkey gobble with your calling abilities?
The first time, well, what I fell into the trick of doing, I got one of these box yelpers.
Yeah.
You'd hear a turkey gobble, and I'd try to get pretty close, and then the first time I heard one gobble, I knew what it was. I knew it was him. When you don't know nothing, and when my uncle didn't know the first damn thing about turkey hunting, he'd kill some turkeys on deer drives. You sit out there with your shotgun on deer drives, and when the dogs are running the deer past the standers, I'd sit there on the first gun I had was a single barrel.
Yeah.
You'd sit there with a single barrel, and I'd have a buckshot in the single barrel, but I'd have a number 6 shot in my hand, and you could trigger the gun when you knew it was coming. If it wasn't a deer, if you thought it was a turkey, you could trigger the gun and put the other thing in there and shoot him. A kid's
changed
gonna
today.
kill anything comes by. Pigeons,
Yeah.
meadow larks, whatever it is.
What is it about that when you're a kid that you just feel like
you just want something in your hand? You want to say, "I done it."
You're right, and it's universal for all children.
That's right. That's right.
You've got grandchildren now.
Well, shit, you got those fangs. You're a hunter-gatherer.
Yeah, a gatherer at that age, as much as anything.
Yeah. You hunt them down and kill them. Our fangs ain't much, and our claws ain't much,
We have shotguns,
and our
though.
teeth ain't much.
We got shotguns, though.
But we got shotgun.
Well, I think, man, I got so many questions for you, but I think it makes sense to kind of try to get your perspective on where we are as a modern turkey hunter now and where you began. I mean, you have lived through the age of turkey hunting, and before we hit record, we were talking.
Yeah.
We were talking about that. I think it's just as a natural thing that a lot of people that hunt turkeys today feel, because they're so abundant, that it might have always been that way. It may have. The way it is now might be the way it has been.
There was a friend of mine named Jim Andrews. He's dead now, like most of my friends. But Jim Andrews was one of these guys that if you went someplace, Jim Andrews was going to find a damn turkey, and if there was any turkey going to be killed, Jim Andrews was going to kill it, and he could never explain why.
Yeah, you've written about him in the past. I've read many passages about where he was buried and what direction he might be traveling.
Yeah.
Tell me about him. Your relationship with him. You've talked about him being. I've read that he just was a turkey magnet.
He was. I said he couldn't explain it either. He couldn't explain it either. His daddy was not a turkey hunter. None of his uncles was a turkey hunter. His brother Henry was a fighter pilot. and his brother Henry was a great shot, but he was a shitty turkey hunter. It's just, I think the principal characteristic is patience. It's a big bird. It's big enough to be, you create an importance in the bird yourself, and that's what pitches it. That's what pitches it.
Yeah. Well, and guys like Jim, I mean, you've written about this too, like the friendships that we make.
Oh, yeah.
The connections we
Well,
make.
then see, Jim and I worked together.
Yeah.
And in fact, as a matter of fact, Jim worked for me. Except when it came to turkey hunting, then I worked for Jim.
What is it about turkey hunting that makes that, like, if not makes friendships like that, enhances them and makes them that much?
It's to people. It may be like art appreciation. A guy falls in love with painting, and then I don't care who he's talking to, he wants to talk about painting and painters and how they did this, or sculpture and sculpted and how they did that.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of things. That horse over there.
Yeah.
That black horse. I did that horse.
Yeah.
I did this. There's this crap around here that I did. You just, I don't know. You ask me why in the hell would a guy waste his damn time making a fake unicorn when there ain't no such a thing as a real unicorn, and I can't answer the question. It just felt like time to make a goddamn unicorn, so I made one.
That's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. I mean, as a hunter, as someone who appreciates this, you want to surround yourself with people that have equal passion.
That's right.
And for somebody like you, your passion is unequaled. It's hard to find people that come to it like you. So then you end up around exceptional folks like Jim Andrews.
Yeah.
Talk about. I mean, you've written about burying him. or being, where he was buried and trying to figure out kind of, and going to church and trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And the pastor talking about which direction he might have traveled in the afterlife. And you had an experience with some turkeys that you called in. Do you remember that experience? Can you talk about that one?
Yeah. His mama. I never will forget when he introduced me to his mama. He lived in Camden, which is in North. It's at the junction with the Alabama and the Tombigbee Rivers up there, and he hunted up around there. And when Jim got out of school, he went into cow business and went broke. And then he had to go to work for market timber for people, and he was just scratching around making a living any damn way he could make a living. And but he never got mad at the world because he didn't have any money, and he had 5 kids, four girls and a boy. And I still correspond with some of the kids. They we still write a little bit back and forth. But he was just one of those guys that everybody likes. Mm-hmm. You meet one every once in a while. There ain't many, but you meet one every once. Jim was just one of those guys.
Yes, sir.
And I guess turkeys just liked him, and so they came to him when they wouldn't go to anybody else.
You tell a story about when you went turkey hunting after he died. And there was 5 gobblers that gobbled on the roost and gobbled and gobbled and gobbled. Yeah. And they flew down out of the tree, and there you were with your call.
Yeah.
And they would gobble at anything. They'd gobble at a Tweety bird. They would gobble at one another. They would gobble at anything, but they ignored you and anything like you did not exist.
And it was it was Jim Andrews probably the best friend I ever had. He's probably the best friend I ever had.
And you felt that those turkeys gobbling and ignoring you were maybe a song for him.
That's imagination. That's imagination. You wish it was that way, but you don't know that.
You wish it was his eulogy that way. Those turkeys were giving you one last chance to see which direction he might have traveled.
Yeah.
Well, the 10th Legion is, I think, the thing that most people, it's the thing that I read it before every turkey season. I know a lot of the folks that I work with do the same thing. And it's inspired, since it was published in 1973, I mean, it's inspired many, many turkey hunters. And I remember reading, so the 10th Legion was published in 1973, and it has inspired me to be a more involved turkey hunter, and inspired many people to go and try it, I think.
We and of course the guy that my partner, there's a new edition coming out.
Yeah,
there's a new edition coming out, and the new book is.
Well, the new book is, I have it here. It's called. You're still writing books at 93.
Yeah.
It's called Infinite Variety. Is that correct?
Infinite Variety.
And he says the title comes from Shakespeare's play, Antony and Cleopatra.
Yeah. I am probably one of the last few Shakespeare readers. I read a lot of Shakespeare.
Especially in the turkey hunting community.
Yeah.
Age cannot wither her, nor cut no stale. Her infinite variety. Yeah.
Every time you go out there, he's going to teach you something. Every time you go out there, he's going to outsmart you in some fresh way you never thought of. And it's never going to get old.
It's magical.
Magic. It's magic. Absolute magic.
When you write, I have some quotes here from the 10th Legion. Not that you need me to quote it, but when you've inspired a lot of people. People call you the poet laureate of turkey hunting. You like that title?
Sells books.
That it does.
It sells books.
To me, the 10th Legion is not a book, really. It's an explanation of turkey hunters. It's an
explanation of a thought process. Yeah. Absolutely, it is.
Yeah, it is. And it's called the 10th Legion because you felt like
Caesar's 10th.
Yeah, Caesar's 10th Legion, and the members of the turkey hunting army are you have said like exhibit dogged determination, much like the Army of the 10th Caesar's 10th Legion. Yeah. And that's why that's titled so.
Yeah. And they are a hell of a lot of people with exactly those thought processes.
That's right.
Or there wouldn't be that many folks in the National Wild Turkey Federation.
Well, I remember when you said when you began hunting, there was only, you remember writing this book and thinking maybe 150 people in the world might care.
Yeah, because I when I figured, I can't remember what I paid the guy to write it. It seemed Theo Ghost and Sons in New York. And it seems to me I did 500 copies. And I think I paid him $1,450 or some such thing as that. And I figured there'd be at least some guys I knew that didn't know I could read and write. They'd buy one out of curiosity. And they would be, and if he quit right there, I would probably have gotten my money back. And if not, then I had a lifetime supply of Christmas presents.
Turned out to be a little bit more than that.
Good deal better than that. Good deal.
Well, I think many people regard it as not only just it's about people, right?
It's about people.
People. It's not
I don't write about turkeys. I write about people and what they do in one specific line.
Yeah. So it's not tips and tactics. If anybody hasn't read it, shame on you. But if you haven't, you're not going to get the tips and tactics. There's some in there.
Oh, yeah,
plenty in there.
And a lot of people going to read it and say, "Well, what the fuck this guy's talking about?"
Well, there was a thing you said that many people who hunt turkeys do so with an attention to detail, a regard for strategy, tactics, and operations, and disregard for personal comfort and convenient that ranks second only to war.
Yeah, to sit out there and freeze your butt off in the cold rain, hoping a turkey might come. You got to be a little bit twisted.
I'm pretty twisted.
Yeah, okay. Welcome to the lodge.
You still believe at the age of 93 you have that same passion? I mean, it's in you. It's never going to leave.
It ain't a bit of change.
Never going to leave.
I've already accepted an invitation or two to go hunt next year. I mean, you can sit in that damn thing right there.
Oh yeah.
You can fold that up and put it in the back of a pickup truck,
dude.
And somebody can take me out in the woods to where they've heard one gobble and dump me off and say, "I'll come back and get you at 9:30," and I can hunt. I can hunt up and down the road.
Oh, it's like to point to a little walker over there. You can sit right in that thing.
I can get out. I can walk. I walk probably now a mile a day.
Really?
I walk the halls
here,
down and back and down and back and down and back. I got an exercise lady that comes by, and she comes 3 days a week, and does things like breathing exexercises and balance exercises and all this kind of stuff. She's real good.
I got to get me one of those.
She's an English woman. She is. As a matter of fact, she has just been home to England. Got children, and does this as a living.
So you're going to get around.
Yeah, so I get around great. I mean, to get out there to be able to. Now I don't drive. I sold my car.
Yeah.
But it was better. I didn't really want to leave home, but my wife did not realize she was dying and really expected to be at home. Mm. And then with her gone, and my daughter worried about how I was doing and what I was doing and when I was doing it, it was just more comfortable for her to move up here.
Yeah.
Where she can drive here in 30 minutes and find out what I'm doing and make sure I'm taking my medicine.
Keep track of you.
Doing all
Keep you from mischief.
Yeah. Right.
Well, you got a little furniture. You're building furniture up here in this apartment.
No, most of this I built before I got here. I can do some stuff here, and I've done a little. Not much since I've been here, but I can. And as soon as I get through with my with my saws and hammers and things over there that I got, I can go back. I got a chair I need caning. I'll cane that chair first, and then I'll go back to doing it. But between writing and reading and caning chairs, and I stay pretty busy.
You are busy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna just want to in my head as I'm turkey hunting, you are the narrator. Like you, when I'm turkey hunting, I've read your book so many times that some of the things that you've written become, and the turkey's coming in, I'm thinking about the words of that book, and I think that's probably true for a lot of people. So
I have people say that to me all the time. Well, you never know what another guy's thinking, but I mean, enough people have said the same thing. Enough people at the convention when I'm sitting there. A lot of folks will buy books, and we sell books. We have a booth every year. Yeah. David Clark and I together have a booth. We sell books, and I sign books and talk to kids. And a lot of people want me to. They take a picture of a kid sitting on my knee, or they take a picture of me holding a kid. I think, I don't know, I think maybe they think if they do it and if they talk about it and if they meet me, I think it forms a society. And I think that's why they do it.
Yeah.
Because God knows I ain't pretty.
Well, you've been working with that lady that comes and gets you the fitness. You're pretty spry.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think it's
never
true.
have known why a woman marries who she marries anyway.
I don't want my wife to figure that out either.
Yeah.
I do think that one of the things that is important to me is that when you have an idea or like an appreciation for something and someone else is able to articulate or explain your feeling for that thing in a way that you never could, which is what you were able to do for so many people for turkey hunting, I feel like it develops a relationship.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, because a lot of folks, when I sign stuff for them, will want me to put something on there about this and that and this and that and this and that and this and that. And you can't, really. I mean, if a guy comes in and it's fine, it's right, Tom Kelly, or best wishes, or good luck next year. But if he wants an intellectual dissertation of why he and I think alike, I can't write that. I just can't do it.
Yeah, because I think people end up
and a lot of folks will want that. I mean, they'll do this and they'll do that, and they'll want something for their son, and then they'll want something for the other son, and they want me to say one thing for one son, and some of them pull out a piece of paper and start reading what they want me to write.
I love it. Did you ever foresee that you would be signing books and that people would think of you in the way that some do?
No, I felt like, well, it's like I said, I went into it with no sense of anything. I like it, and I like to tell people what I like to do. Well, when you go to a football game, you got a special team that you like to win because you remember Bart Starr, you remember the Green Bay Packers back when they used to be the Green Bay Packers.
So, Tom, that you feel. What do you think? You say your wife really is one of the main reasons why you started writing.
Oh yeah.
What did she think about your success and fame?
My wife worked for the FBI, and well, when I got out of school, my wife was born in a sawmill town. Her daddy worked for the sawmill. And her daddy, his name was Leon Mosley. And he was one of those kind of guys that everybody liked him. There was no way not to like Leon Mosley. I don't give a damn who you were. There was no way not to like Leon Mosley. For instance, Helen was up there teaching school. And at the high school in Century, which is just across the line. It's in the Florida Panhandle, and it's just across the line from Alabama. She was up there teaching school, and I went to work up there for the sawmill. And we met, and we started dating. And then she knew I was connected. My connection with the service, and when the Korean War started, that I was going to have to go back. But she left Century and went to work for the FBI in Mobile as a secretary at the FBI, and we got along great. We got along great. I cannot remember ever having a crossword with her from the time I met her until the day she died. Not one time.
Wow.
And that's unusual. That's unusual. And I was not, and this was in the days when, without the cell phones, when you'd leave working scattered over the area that I was scattered over. When as I got up, we moved back to a town that was just about 1.5 miles from the town she was brought up in. So she was there. She had her mother and her sister was still there. But it was you went out in the woods in the morning, and as late as far as I had to go, and as much as I had to do, it might be 7:30 or 8 o'clock or 8:30 before I got back. Never anything, never. It was just as smooth as silk all the time.
Complain.
That's as smooth.
Did she ever hunt with you?
Once or twice, and she went and she said, "This is fine, but from now on out, if anybody asks me would I like to go turkey hunting, I would tell them thank you, but I've already been."
My wife and I have similar.
That's amazing.
Separation of church and state. I say.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't out chasing girls or getting drunk or losing money or wrecking cars, and as long as I did that and brought home enough of a paycheck to feed her and the kid, that was it.
I want to just read some of the quotes from 10th Legion and just talk through some of them with you, because I think I've been wanting to do that for a long time since I first read your book. I think to the title, there's a quote in there that says, "While fall hunting is all about beauty, spring hunting is war."
Mm-hmm. Spring hunting, you're trying to kill him. Fall hunting is the woods in the fall. That's when the woods are pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, the leaves are colored. The bird migration is on. Everything out there is bright and colorful. It ain't hot anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a lovely place to be if you don't do anything but go out there and wander around. I used to, even after I was working, even after I was managing that tract of timber for the sawmill, I carried lunch with me, mm-hmm. and there would be a lot of places that I would deliberately not eat lunch until I got close enough to go eat lunch there, because there was just something around in the world that soothed you. It made you feel at home. It made you feel comfortable. You become at one with the woods, and it would have been, to me, it would have been pretty grim to go to a restaurant every day to eat lunch, or go to the lunchroom every day to eat lunch. You did that when you were there, but when you were on your own, and there were 3-4 places. There was a place on the other side of the Atmore prison farm. It was rolling terrain, great big damn timber, and a lot of poles, a lot of piling, a lot of saw logs, a lot of everything. And I'd a lot of times make arrangements to be close enough to it where I could go there and eat. There was a couple of places in Choctaw County the same way. Up on some high, Choctaw County changes from the flatlands to the combination of upland and bottomland with a hell of a lot more hardwood. And there were places up there that were just comforting to be in. And then the fact that in those kind of places that were comforting to be in with all that variety of timber, there were more turkeys.
Did you feel along your life that there was a medicinal quality to turkey hunting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, a lot of folks, it's just, did I kill 16 or did I kill 6? With me, it's a hell of a lot more than that. It's always been a hell of a lot more than that. Always been a hell of a lot more.
And I often have this, especially in the
ice.
The ice machine.
Yeah. Let you know it's working.
Yeah, every time you got ice, you know it. I think in the springtime, when I go out, it's like you're inside all winter, or you're mostly inside if you ski or you ice fish or whatever, you can get out. Spring is just like, it's new. It's new, and then any buildup of anxiety or stress you might have had during the winter months when you couldn't get out as much can be erased during that time.
Yes, sir.
You experienced that through your life, I imagine. Yeah. All right, let's see what else we got here. The bird possesses a remarkable ability to turn arrogance into hopelessness, which we've kind of covered. But
you think I got his ass now, and you get out there and lap. Lap.
Every time. We talked about my friend Steven Ranella talks about how it is that we return to that arrogance having been beaten so many times. Well,
yeah, but of course, there'll be areas where nobody. There's some books that show the normal turkey ranges, and it might cover a section and a half, 1,000 acres, 1,500 acres. And they will range across that 1,500 acres fairly regularly. They'll handle one part of it in the spring, and when the hens are nesting, and they'll do another part of it when the acorns get ripe. They would not be ripe at one time of the year or another, and they cover that area pretty comfortably. And I think it's you get it, to me, working in the woods and being in the woods, especially when I was balking timber for the sawmill, the lower coastal plain is dull. Because you got pine and nothing but pine, and you got mucky-bottomed hardwood bottoms and nothing but that. You get a little bit north of there, and you begin to get this absolute tremendous variety of species, tremendous variety of timber types, tremendous variety of different areas that a turkey or any other animal will work in, and it's just it's just more fun up there than it is down in the flatwoods.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think in my life, when I think about turkey hunting, and I try to think of, you say that your friend Jim Andrews could just think of how a turkey thinks. I feel like that's the skill I'm developing. I feel like that's...
You probably are. You probably are.
Or it's like the one I want to develop at least.
You probably are.
If I can think where he wants to be, or think where he's going.
Or, ain't no sense in going there because I never see anything over there. But if I go over here, I see them all the time. I'm going there every damn time.
And I've recently moved to the west, where you have these big expanses of public land. Where this year I did it a couple times, where you roll into a place you don't know anything about the landscape, anything about the birds, and find a bird and kill it.
The thing is now, it's so easy to find out.
Yeah,
you got the Resource Planning Act, which crews every acre in the United States is recruised every 10 years. And you got maps. You got Google. You can call up a map. You can call up a map on Google. I can call up a map. You can call up a map on Google, and you can see, and they update the damn thing all along. And if your car is parked in your front yard, they can see it sees the car.
Yeah. It does see.
You can goddamn near read the license tag.
Yeah, we have a mapping system now on your phone.
Yeah,
where you can,
yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
It's called Onyx. You can see pretty much. You can look at a ridge. You can see the topographical features.
Absolutely.
You go, oh, Turkey would definitely go there, and then you go and you find it.
Yeah.
And maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but you do have a leg up.
Yeah.
That's for sure. This is probably, I don't know, of all the quotes I like, this is maybe my favorite. You have to pay for every bird you kill, and the coin you use to pay for them is time.
Time. Right.
Time.
Right. You cannot hurry. You can't say, I got 30 minutes, I'm going to run out to section 14 and kill a turkey and run right back. You can't say to your wife, okay, Thanksgiving's coming and the in-laws are coming down here. I'll kill a turkey this afternoon and drop it off in the yard so you can be cooking it tomorrow when they get here.
No schedules.
You can't do it. You can't.
No schedules. Another one you said is you don't hunt turkeys because you want to. You hunt turkeys because you have to.
You ain't got no choice.
Imagine a man that's been doing it for 80 years.
Yeah, right.
He's pretty stuck.
You ain't got no choice.
Here's another one. This is a long one, but when you talk about what happens when you're a turkey hunter and how you explain it to other people, you say, he also knows that when he comes back at home empty-handed, as he will do regularly, he will have no satisfactory explanation. He is well aware, for he has met dozens of them, of the numbers of people that will approach him on street corners and in bars and at parties, who will open each conversation with, well, did you get him? When he answers no, they will be off and running. They will tell him in delighted tones and in the clearest detail the story of a friend of theirs who has a feeble-minded nephew.
Right.
Of how this nephew is occasionally allowed home on leave from the state funny farm.
Yeah.
How that the last time this poor defective creature was home, week before last, he went out in the woods just behind the house, sat on a log with a turkey yelper that was given away as a souvenir by a typewriter company in 1937. He yelped twice and killed a turkey that weighed 23 pounds.
That's right.
Picked.
That's right.
The explanation of it.
It's all in it.
And that story right there.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. And it explains why it's so magical, because you can never, ever, you never master it. You can never get good at it.
You will never get good at it. You can get good at it, but you will never master it.
That's right.
You will never master it.
And every time you feel you have the mastery,
that's right.
That crazy dinosaur will.
You'll think, how in the hell could I have been so goddamn dumb? But you are. You really and truly are.
Another one. This is the one that I'll close with, because I think this is the one that most people, it's at the end of the 10th Legion, and I think it really encapsulates everything perfectly. The first turkey that ever came to me on the ground did it a long time ago. I sat there with my hands shaking, my breath short, my heart hammering so hard I could not understand why he could not hear it. The last turkey that came to me last spring had exactly the same effect.
Yeah.
And the day that this does not happen to me is the day that I quit.
I don't think I'll quit. I think that will be the day that they close the lid of the coffin. that final thump, the one you won't hear.
Yeah. I mean, you've done this for so long. You've put so much into it. You know, it defines a lot of your professional and personal life.
Well, and then of course, God knows, I've gotten some money back.
Yeah.
That's the marvelous thing. And I didn't get into it. I didn't sit down and say, I believe I'll start writing about turkeys and make a pile of money.
Colonel Kelly, is there something you would say to turkey hunters of the future, kind of about your experience as a turkey hunter and what you've been able to do?
We need to work. Well, I don't know how you could do it, but we need to, because we are really and truly losing turkey hunters. We're losing hunters every year. Every state, I think, shows a diminution in the number of licenses. And there's a pile of things. Cruelty to animals. Why do you shoot those poor little innocent things? Why this? Why that? Why that? Why do you take all that trouble? Why don't you spend some time at home with your kids instead of running up and down the goddamn road? That that we've got to get, I think, we may can do it in time, but we got to get the world to understand that there are different kind of hobbies, and your hobby is simply one of thousands and thousands and thousands of hobbies. And then the fact that you can eat what you is an added thing.
It is.
But that we gotta, if we don't do that, well, it ain't gonna be. I don't know how long it's gonna be, but we could come to the point where, well, like for instance, now I think in Australia, you can't own a weapon of any kind.
Now, there's places in this country where, they're restricted heavily.
They've taken all deadly weapons away from anybody except pocket knives and stuff like that. But they're getting it where, and the more variety, the strata needs to be not like this. It needs to be that thick, where you can play in any part of it you want to play, and stay out of jail.
You're right about that. I think the last question I have for you is, if you could speak to, say, the last turkey you'll ever kill, and you could have a conversation with that turkey, what would you say?
I wish there was one more behind you. I wish you wasn't the last one.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
All right, that was Colonel Tom Kelly, legend in the outdoor space. He's on the 40th anniversary edition of the 10th Legion. So go buy the 10th Legion, go read it, and remember this good man. Oh, he's not dead, but remember him anyway. Remember his work. Can he talk about old people like they're dead? That's not true. Tom's still alive and kicking. I talked to him not long ago. And so, he might get out in the woods this season even. And maybe I'll take him. Hopefully I can hook up and get him out in the woods for turkeys. Let him hit a box call and call one in for us. That'd be great. So that's one of my life goals.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
But we're going to get on to the next one. The next one was it PP? This was PP, right, Phil? You were around for Valerius Geist.
Yes, I was around.
You were in the room, right, when we did the recording. Valerius Geist, talk about presence, Phil. Talk about a man that comes in a room and commands a presence.
Yeah, and it's not like he's boisterous or anything. He just has kind of this air about him.
Everything from what he wore to how he spoke to how he told a story. I remember he walked in the room here in the main area of the Meat Eater offices, and immediately everybody was just drawn to him. Moths to a flame, as it were. People started to realize who that was. And this is, a pretty unique place where everybody might know who that guy is. But after we aired this podcast, I realized not a lot of people knew who Valerius Geist was. And that's pretty sad because Valerius Geist is one of the most important figures of our time in hunting. So that, for me, it felt like an honor to sit down with him. But after we recorded and I saw all of your reaction, I felt even more lucky to help bring this man to you. His story of life. And much like Jim Posewitz cried during his episode, Tom Kelly cried during his episode, and Valerius Geist cried a little bit during his episode. And it was he was talking about a pet moose when he cried. A little strange, but I liked it. So a lot of these guys are telling stories of their past, and I think that's another kind of through line for this best of. These guys are reliving their past, talking about their great works, and enjoying what a story can do for all you listeners. And so we're going to get to another one of my favorite podcasts of all time, definitely one of my favorite people, and a really, really life-changing conversation that I had with Dr. Valerius Geist. Enjoy.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
There's no way to really transition to the North American model from this conversation, but we're going to do it anyway.
So this is what I spent 2 winters
in
the Spazizi, studying stone sheep and mountain goats. And, of course, caribou and moose and everything else. But I had studied moose before that, and moose is one of my favorites. It's a great
You
fun.
speak with high regard about moose.
Oh,
I mean, I think you...
Oh, I love them.
Of all the things that we've talked about thus far,
I love them.
Your love of moose
I absolutely do.
Very apparent.
Well, they are all... tame moose are incredible. Incredible animals. You see, if my book, Deer of the World... I wrote quite extensively about moose, and because I'm a German, I was able to get the experience from Europe into the English language. And there was quite a bit of... the moose was quite a cultural animal in Europe. For instance, in Sweden, it was used for postal service in winter.
Yeah, I was going to say that...
And an attempt was made by one of the Swedish kings to put a whole regiment of dragoons on top of moose because they make a superlative, and I mean it, a superlative mount.
Yeah.
And had that succeeded, I can just see this miracle weapon, because when horses for the first time confront moose, they see a ghost and they spook. So if that cavalry regiment of dragoons would have run into another, there would have been horses scattered from here up and down.
I'm picturing this.
That's right. But it failed because moose are very fickle in feeding. And that's the difficulty. They make a fantastic mount.
Really?
So fantastic.
Really?
Yes.
Throughout history,
yes.
This is common.
This is history. I'm not putting anything onto you.
No. I don't think you are, but I'm very excited about this idea.
In Russia, when the conquest of Siberia began, they discovered that anybody mounted on moose could outrun the Cossacks, because the moose will run much faster and much more better over uneven terrain. Yeah. Now, if you take a tame moose and train him to carry a pack, you put on the pack, and the Russians have done that, by the way. They packed these moose with very delicate instruments, because that moose will carry that pack without a slightest movement of anything through swamp. He will swim through raging rivers with that. He will crawl underneath deadfalls. He will slither over top of deadfalls. In the evening, he will deliver you that pack undisturbed.
The tame moose.
The tame moose, that's right.
How do they tame these?
So easy. They're such babies. Some of the cute things, they're wonderful. They're they're very curious, yeah?
Yeah.
They're very sweet.
Yeah.
And they follow you around and about.
They
and
are. You're right.
They are sweet. And they have such a lovely sound.
You just make a few.
They can, yeah. So, for instance, one baby moose, it was a little bull, had learned that with muddy feet, he can't get into the house. So he would call, lift his legs, wait till they were cleaned, and then he went in and sat down beside the fireplace. That was sort of the typical thing. They're very curious. Yeah. They will follow you around. They put their big nose into everything that you have, and so on and so forth. And to give you some examples, a forester raised one female, and she loved to go hunting. Loved to go hunting with him. If she heard a gun going off in the distance, she would take off. And the foresters in East Germany were very surprised how accurate she could track with her nose. Yeah, they said she's as good as the best tracking dog.
A blood track moose?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they can track.
I'm losing it.
Yeah.
This is the best.
Oh God! Now it gets even better.
Yes,
because this forester. So when he took the shotgun, the moose was right there. And they went out. But moose also have the habit, and they don't kick that habit, of suddenly up and they're gone for a little walk. 135 miles away. I mean, something like that, yeah. So the moose was gone for a while, and the forester happened to be in a boat in one of the canals, and he's poling down, and suddenly there the moose shows up, and the moose recognizes the forester. That's Mother. In she jumps, turns over the boat. There you are.
I could listen to moose stories like that all day.
Well,
you got more?
This one's a bit tragic. Because,
one last one.
It's a bit tragic because she was a pest. No two ways about it. And when the forester was transferred to another district, a quite long distance away, they thought the moose would stay. She didn't. She found them over long distance. And they decided at this point, no, we do not want you. Now you remember that every moose experienced that in its lifetime. There comes a point when, as a calf, the female says, no more.
No more. Yep.
And that moose understood. And what happened next brings tears to my eyes. She appeared frequently at night, standing underneath the window.
Oh.
You see?
Yeah. We're both crying, man.
Yes, I'm still moved by that. This is what moose are. They are like a 6-foot dog, yeah? They're sweet, absolutely sweet. Oh, they make wonderful mounts, and even the biggest bulls, yeah? During the rut, it's a bit awkward at that time. You know? But then I see pictures of a nice bull moose with antlers flared being tamed around the house, and the 3-year-old kid being placed on his back, and he runs around.
Do you feel with moose, they're with every animal that can be labeled as gregarious? Or...
Well, I'll tell you the following. By the time I finished in Banff National Park with my bighorns, the females physically tried to keep me in the group. Physically. Blocked my way. Deliberately. Pushed me back in. And when I broke, they tried to follow me, and they followed me everywhere. And the males attacked me.
Some people might ask, given your relationship to you've studied goats, you've studied mountain goats, you've studied wild sheep, you've studied moose, you've studied wolves, deer. How you still could be a hunter?
No,
I would not ask that, but some might. How do you answer that question? How can you still kill a moose knowing that it brings you to tears?
The point of the matter is, hunting is provisioning. You bring in food. Yes, I will keep the antlers of a moose that I kill. It's a treasured memoir of one. I have no difficulties there. That is food. And the only obligation I have is to kill that animal as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
That's my only obligation in this regard. And the other obligation is not to waste.
It's like overwhelmingly pragmatic in the face of emotion.
The first deer that I killed was a mule deer doe. I brought back, of course, Grandma and I were great pals, to say the very least. She took the head and she made head cheese out of it. Now, how many people will take the head of a mule deer and make head cheese out of it?
Not many.
Not many. It's delicious head cheese. To this day, when I kill a buck, and I do all the cutting myself, and so on. The last thing that I do is I skin the head, and I carefully, with a very, very sharp scalpel, remove the edible meat, and that makes a magnificent stew. Magnificent. It's one of the best tasting stews you can have. It's only once a year or twice a year, depending how many bucks I kill.
Yes.
Now I kill 1 or 2 bucks a year. That's it. Or nothing. Depends on the circumstances. And I don't waste the bones. The bones are so wonderful in stock. In fact, I'm almost fanatical about bone stock. I boil 2 big pots of bone stock a week for it. The first thing I'll do when I get home is I'll be doing just that, bone stock. Now, of course, you add a few more things like chicken feet, chicken gizzards, and so on. Pig foot is a good thing so that you have a very gelatinous result. Of course, turmeric and all other goodies into it as well. But usually there are 3 species of animals and 7, 8 species of plants which go into my stock. As such, it's very, very healthy, and it has kept me free of, especially colds and influenzas. I haven't had a cold now for 3 years.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
That's kind of, let's talk about kind of the ethos of our company and what we do, and the reason I joined this.
Yes,
and I'm in Bozeman, and that we're sitting here is very much what you're talking about, the idea that we can be pragmatic, but also feel an emotion for this animal, be pragmatic in the taking of it.
We can go a step further.
Yes.
You are aware that I'm writing my second book on human evolution.
Yes.
So one of the things that I'm very much aware of is that we have biochemical pathways which evolved only because we ate meat. The first biochemical pathway, for instance, is the digestion of elastin, which is found in muscle fibers and only in animals. And you and I share the same enzyme, elastase, which digests it. That tells you something, yeah? The one that I really like, are the trans fats. Well, if you take trans fats in margarine or trans fats in oils, they are awful. They're very, very bad for your health. Never eat the bloody things. But take a peek at what you find in milk or in cheese or in butter. There are trans fats in cheese, in butter, and in milk. Do you know where they come from? From natural hydrogenation in the rumen of the cow or the sheep or whatever it is. And you know what your body does with them? You have an enzyme specifically to pick up those trans fats and change them into conjugated linoleic acid, which you need for brain development. Now that tells me that we've been eating the fat of ruminants for a very, very long time. And you need, by the way, meat very much for brain development.
That cannot be overstated. And we've talked about that here on this podcast with the Professor William von Hippel down in Queensland. We talked about human evolutionary biology and the kind of philosophy of.
Okay.
And not only are those pathways created through that, but our social structure, how we communicate with each other, how we set up our societies was often driven by.
No, hunting was vitally, vitally important right from the outset in human evolution. The moment we became humans, we were killers. We were such efficient killers that we dramatically changed the biodiversity of Africa and continued to change it. I've written a whole chapter on that.
I'm going to read it. Let's get to we got to get to, before we go here, the North American model of wildlife conservation, because I would say that I believe most people will know your name from that. In the sense of our audience, and then just in the general sense, because it is, in my mind, the most important set of principles that we have in wildlife and conservation, and in any model across the world, which you have vast experience. The North American model is...
it's a superlative model, and it is a real wonderful creation of North American society. It is a gift, a cultural gift to the world. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now... When we've heard from Shane here. He called us earlier. We've had Shane on this podcast before to talk about the origins of the North American model, his role in marketing it, for lack of a better term.
God thanks. Without Shane, it wouldn't have flown.
Yeah, what a voice he was.
Yes, he was. Also, John Organ was another one of them. For those people, it would have failed because I was condemned when I first published that model. When I first published the comprehensive model, the Wildlife Society wouldn't review the book.
Yeah, they took Shane and other and took them on the road and went.
They did.
Basically
That's
conference
right.
to conference.
That's right. They did
talk about these things.
Yeah. I am in debt forever for that. Yeah.
So let's talk about the origins of the model, where it came from, and then get to some of the hardships you had pushing it forward.
Well, let me put it this way: I was interested in the early in the 1960s and 70s about how to make wildlife. Pay for itself, or that's a bad way of putting it, but how do I make wildlife more valuable? And in my innocence in those days, I thought that maybe game farming would be a way to go, and I had, God thanks, a bit of money, and I organized a conference in 1971 where game farmers from South Africa, from Texas, from Alberta, and various places, England and so on, came, and where we had a wonderful set of papers and discussions, and that was published by the IUCN in 2 volumes, and I was the editor, and Fritz Walter, my dear friend, was the editor as well. And as I was editing this, I suddenly realized, oh my God, to push that is an absolute idiocy in North America, because what it does, it would destroy your system of wildlife conservation. Now, you didn't know that you have a system of wildlife conservation.
I was just going to say that, we weren't aware that system existed.
In fact, the stimulus to write it down came from a discussion I had with 2 senior colleagues of the Canadian Wildlife Service. They were pushing game farming, and I said to them, for heaven's sake, what are you doing? Don't you realize that you're destroying your system of wildlife conservation? And they both shot back to me, we have no system of wildlife conservation. I said, you damn rights you have one. I'll write it down for you.
Take a break. We could take a brief moment to think about that statement. And this is after many of the key legislation of our time that built our model.
That's right. In other words, what I did was I summarized that existing model. The genius behind the model is not I, it's you.
Yeah, not me.
Well, no, it has been, you see, all the principles of that model have gone through the hard school of democratic debate. Yeah. They survived, There is not a person in this world who has the wisdom to construct that model. No. It could only have happened culturally over time.
Yeah, and if you reverse time, and listeners of this podcast will know we talk about this often, you reverse time, you think about in 1936 and 37, the first National Wildlife Conference, Franklin D. Roosevelt.
That's right.
Bits
came together.
And pieces of
that's
this
right.
come
that's
together,
right.
the Lacey Act.
That's right. But no American could have written that model. No. Your Americans who wrote about that had a totally different thing. And you can look at Aldo Leopold's book, Game Management, and take a look at Larry Jan's introduction, where he speaks about this. It's a totally different way of looking at it, Well, I'm a European, as you know, and I was very familiar with the hunting, very deeply familiar with the hunting in Europe. And when I wrote that model, basically, when I started it, I contrasted it, what you do in North America comparing what you do in Europe, and wrote that down. So, for instance, you have the large wildlife, largely, except for fur, in fur also in the public domain. Well, you don't have that in Europe. Although, by law, it should be. The reality is wildlife is privately controlled. So it was one step after the other. And I first wrote out a model with 4 steps. Then I thought about it. And eventually I developed it to 7 steps, which are found in my book, which I published in 1995 with Ian McTaggart Cowan together. And there I had the most detailed, in some regards it still is one of the most detailed, accounts of the North American system of wildlife conservation. It had, by the way, a review of chronic wasting disease. It had a review of the tuberculosis outbreaks in there.
And this is, generated by your work looking at game farms.
That's right. Because most of your chronic wasting disease basically is spread by game farms. Yes. Somebody said in the United States nicely, CWD is spread by trucks.
Very much so.
But
Well, and when you codify this model
right.
in a way, the fact that it's driven by like your study, your studies in game farms, and then
well, I published
CWD
22 papers
Yeah,
on it. So, and the very last one that by that time was quite accepted, I presented at an international conference in Ireland, because one of the gentlemen who invited me had studied, and he said, "This is the best model we know in the world, and why don't you expound on it?" And I emphasized there its role in public health, because most of the human diseases we have come from wildlife or tame animals or domestic animals. Yeah, and the best thing you can do from a perspective of public health, the best thing we could have ever done, is to keep all our wildlife wild. Not in the. That's what CWD comes from.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
and today we are faced with an enormous dilemma.
and in 1995, no one was talking about CWD.
Well, I had the first
And you-
review of that.
Yes,
You can read it.
which I have, at the behest of Shane Mahoney.
Yes.
You're talking about you predicting. When you read it, you're like, well, this is 10, 15 years before this thing had proliferated. And here is someone calling to bear what CWD can become.
That was 1995.
Yeah.
I first warned about the disease in 1991 in my book Elk Country, page 169. Please read.
I will.
In those days, the disease was not even known as chronic wasting disease. It was called some kind of a scrapie.
Yeah.
See? And I had done my homework on the German side. See, that is the advantage of having another language at times, yeah? The Germans had been very much concerned with the TSEs. I realized, oh my God, what is coming our way? And I warned in that. I was told later on that a game farmer who loved my writing came to that spot, read it, burst out into red face and ripped the book apart. Too bad.
Yeah, I mean, TSEs is something that
TSEs.
we now very much understand.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm, having in 1995, I was but 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
10 years old, whatever. But to think that back that far, that these kind of things bore for you to codify that model came from an understanding of game farms, understanding of disease like CWD,
yes.
and then this is what's driving this
Mm-hmm.
is incredibly. It's remarkable to me.
But at the
that's where
same time,
came
it
from
was
in
so
your mind.
futile, you see?
Yes.
Because we still have not controlled the CWD prions are spreading. And the dangers are so acute to our economy because Norway has already banned all products from straw and hay from areas which contaminate with CWD to enter Norway. So that's a big hint with a telephone pole.
Yeah.
Believe you me.
That's
horrible.
gonna be a spider web.
That's going to be something. Yeah. And basically, you have to blame now the politicians. They were very well informed. But of course, game farmers thought, oh, forget this stupid professor. We know better. That always happens.
Always. And there's CWD funding mechanisms in appropriation in Congress right now that are sitting in committee that likely will not get out. And this is just asking for more funding to do research.
Well, and that's the wrong thing to do. This is the wrong thing to do. We don't need any more research right now. We need action. We need implementing policies. And I have written that. I'm the chief author, in fact, on a policy document which we produce, which, by the way, your leading scientists acknowledged, agreed with, cooperated with us. They realized what we were doing. When you write a policy document, you write it you spread out the understanding that you have and feed in the understanding from various places so that you can come out with several principles. What do you have to do to stop the disease? And the first one is that you stop the transport of all animals and parts and so on. And that means, like it or not, the commercial side.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
You have to. That's the first step.
And I think that's something where within the hunting community, it's accepted that this is something that we should do. And can
The hunting
do.
community is coming along. That's right. But you must. In other words, we have so much knowledge and had it for decades that we should have acted then.
Yeah.
And I am horrified at the potential consequences of this. Yeah. But I'm sorry, I was not able to convince then people, and they threatened me in court and threatened my wife with death and God knows what else.
Well, I don't want to go over too many of these types of things, but there was a lot of pushback to the North American model when you first presented it.
Correct.
And I think it's important to examine that pushback to kind of, in its place and time, why it happened.
Well, it was based on misunderstanding. The misunderstanding that arose was because I spoke of this model of wildlife being in the public domain. This was considered to be politically socialism. And they accused me of that. Well, of course, I am a great fan of courageous wildlife and environmental action on private land. In fact, one of the great things about North America, your country, is that we do have a large amount of land in private hand outside the public domain, because on these lands we have some of the most brilliant examples of what to do in order to rectify problems on public land.
Yeah.
You see?
Yep.
I am enthusiastic about this. I am a great defender of private property precisely because here we can have actions that mitigate. We can learn so much.
In the value it creates.
It's tremendous value. I'm
recent
not
studies-
against private.
Yeah.
I'm on the opposite. I'm enthusiastically in favor of it.
And at the time, when you read like wildlife as a public trust resource, elimination of markets for game, these are things that a capitalist probably not digging too much.
Well, you see, don't accuse the capitalists. Most capitalists have a brain. If I have a chance to talk to the capitalists why we should have no markets in game, when he sees the consequences of having illegal markets, like the wonderful work by Terry Gross, who used to be in the West, your head honcho in wildlife, but with the Wildlife Service in wildlife law enforcement. And he was very much involved in getting the Ashland laboratory up and running. A great man. In his retirement, he wrote fantastic books. I mean it. And each chapter dealt with an episode. And there you learn just how big an underground of illegal activities you have. No capitalist that I can think who had a brain would disagree.
Yeah. Do you remember any moments of where you really had to defend the model that you felt were seminal? At that time?
They were cute, really cute, really cute. One of the most outrageous things that happened was in Texas. My friend Fritz Walter, very, very dear friend, he was an ethologist, the great antelope expert, retired at Texas A&M, and the students put on a very nice seminar for him. And they asked me to be the keynote speaker. Fritz Walter and I were close friends for decades, yeah. And I don't hear anything anymore. And one day I think, it's getting close now to that. Let's give them a call. And I called, and the poor student said, Dr. Geist, we were told that if we would invite you, all our conference funding would be taken away. Oh, boy. Well, I called Fritz and he said, look, if you don't come, I won't come. So I came. And I gave one of the most innocent papers I've ever given in my lifetime. I explained the reason why the Irish elk had these enormous antlers. We were in a auditorium on a high school, I think it was. And that in itself is an interesting thing, why Irish elk evolved these enormous antlers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And as I was going off the stage, out of the curtain stepped Texan colleagues, grabbed hold of my hand, says, well, we're all with you, but I cannot be seen with you.
You're an anti-hero.
Well, today I'm a hero in Texas because I also published how to grow trophy antlers, basically, how it was done in Europe, because I knew that intimately for a long time. And some Texas ranchers in the south of Texas read it, thought it was very sensible, tried it, and of course it works like a charm.
We should get into this story. We can't leave this on the table because it involves Hermann Goering, involves the Nazis. So take us into this one.
Well, yeah, that's right. But first of all, I will tell you the following: these ranchers are using the thought patterns and so on, not from the past, but also from our own and from our own observations. And the result is the ranch that I've seen. It's beautiful natural vegetation, magnificent deer growing on it. In 1 week, I saw 3 bucks that would break the record. It would enter the record book of Boone Crockett Club. And if you in your lifetime see one, you've been kissed by the gods. I saw 3 in 1 week. And right now, you have all over the United States the Boone Crockett Club scores of whitetail antlers dropping, except on those Texas ranches. They're going up, and they will go up. I know, because we're now discussing things and we're introducing other measures. And you have wonderfully healthy populations, yeah?
And this is all because of a buck to doe ratio.
Not quite. Not quite. It's a little bit more than that. It is really the first thing is that you condition the landscape in such a fashion that you have rich food all the time. You must make sure you get big fawns growing, yeah? Good mothers, good does. You have to reduce the density, and you have to look after the landscape to make it rich and productive. That's number 1. Number 2 is you eliminate some of the things that are poor performers, that you take out. And the next thing is that you don't kill your big breeding bucks. What the Germans did was, and that became law, when they realized that you could, they had a system of class 1 and class 2. The class 1 and class 2 were split into A and B. Class 1A were the trophy stags that were breeders. You would never touch them. They were off limits. You could only kill 1B, or under certain circumstances, a harvest stag was allowed. That's 1A. Then you could never kill a 2A. That was a stag for the future. You could kill a 2B. When I was last hunting in Wyoming for elk, I had the chance to shoot a young bull with enormously long, thin antlers. I wouldn't hang such a thing on my wall. I would turn around in shame. That bull had a future. He had to live. And of course I didn't shoot him.
And his progeny had to live as well.
Pardon me?
His children had to live as well.
In other words, yes, this was a bull that had not yet bred, yeah, but he was a big, magnificent bull, yeah, but he was a satellite bull. He was not even with a rutting group, yeah. He was just entering it. That's not an animal you kill. That's an animal you allow to live. I killed a bull 10 minutes later who I was so happy to have. It was an old bull. It was a grass-antlered bull. See, this means something to me. This means almost nothing to most people. To me, this was the joy of joys. See, grass-antlered bulls live during the antler growing period on sedges and grasses which have no toxins in it, yeah. And that means that he was living on some of the better grasslands created by the forest fires that you had, yeah. He was hog fat. But he didn't have a mane. Shortage of protein. The antlers were relatively short, and because there were no toxins in that food, they were perfectly symmetrical. And that's the sign of a grass-antlered bull. I have it hanging on my wall now. That's what I wanted. I got it. We had to wait for 15 minutes for the sun to rise before I could take the photograph. It was that quick. See, I called the bull in, but that's another big story, because the German counts in the 1880s and the great hunters found themselves in a dilemma. They couldn't hunt the magnificent stags of the Carpathian Mountains or the Danube Delta, because in the thickets the animals were invisible. And you could hunt and pussyfoot as much as you wanted to, you'd never see them. You never kill them. But these were noblemen, educated people, which were wonderful authors, yeah. They began to understand that if I play bull successfully, I can walk in on that thing or it will run you over, as a matter of fact. And that's exactly what happens. Now, these writings are marvelous. I internalized them early on. When I had a chance to try it out on elk, it worked like a charm. It is. You have to watch out. You realize that you kill the bull in the thicket. You go into the thicket. And the greatest fun of all is if you convince the females that you are a beautiful stranger, and they break away from the harem and they run towards you, and the harem good-hitting bull is behind them. Yes, it's fun.
I never thought we'd get elk tips out of this podcast, but I'm very much enjoying that elk tip. Well, I mean, we could do this for, gosh. I knew it was going to be like this. I knew I was going to say nothing and be speechless a lot and want another 5 hours with you. I think we must return to the North American model for a second.
Please do.
Because it's hard for me to explain its importance. And it's not something that is ingrained enough in our hunting public right now.
Correct.
It is not, when you buy a license, it is not listed as part of as part of the game laws.
Right.
It's not right there. I mean, people that listen to this podcast will know a lot about it. Certainly there's a lot of resources, and you're working on some now with Shane to learn more about it. But why do you feel, because it's such an astounding, long-lasting model, even before you codified it, why do you believe that it's not, you don't get your game regulations book in Montana or Wyoming? Why is it not on the back cover?
Actually, that's a very good question, and I cannot answer that. I do know that it is being written up. Occasionally, it is being rewritten incorrectly, by the way, to fulfill secret wishes in part. But it is something that I feel school children should know about, because it returned life and biodiversity and beauty to your land. And that is what wildlife management should be all about. It's a hands-on way of generating more diversity rather than less diversity. You know? If you let the wolves go through the landscape, you will suffer tremendous loss in biodiversity. If you, on the other hand, play God, and you have to, that is your responsibility today in landscape, because there are no natural landscapes in North America. There haven't been for 12,000 years. Yeah. Your landscapes are artifacts of human activity.
The way you put that is striking, that you're looking at an artifact that has been manipulated, will continue to be manipulated.
That's right. And it was manipulated very, very cleverly up to the time of the discovery of North America by the Europeans, you see, because when they entered, they never realized that they were entering a highly, highly civilized landscape, by which I mean that the landscapes had been manipulated in favor of human wants and needs and conditions, They were artifacts that served humanity, and those people that entered had not a clue about it. And now we do.
What a lesson to learn from that model and from you is that you must understand your place in time. Like, you must understand when you look at a landscape how it got to be that way.
That's right.
There's no way you can understand being in it, being a part of it, if you don't understand how it got to be the way it was.
But let's go, if you follow our unfortunately now misguided environmentalism, you're going to create forest fire conditions like you wouldn't believe. A landscape of natural biodiversity, which has the large mammals in it, is an open landscape in which the annual production of plant material is largely consumed. When the forest fires occur, they're small, they're cool. You don't have these enormous conflagrations that you now have. So you see, when human beings came to this continent about 15 to 17,000 years ago, they came into a continent that was hit hard by about 60 genera of large mammals. And they hit the continent so hard that the vegetation, most of the continent, was so low that you evolved here, like the pronghorn antelope, a species of animal that is the highest speed runner in the world. You can only evolve high-speed running in wide open landscapes, The Texas deer that I talked about are fantails, they're Texas whitetail. And the Texas whitetail is a deer that evolved in open landscapes. And its orbits, are shaped in such a fashion that they would have been able to click up very simply, because in those days you had enormous predatory and carrion feeding birds around. Yeah, same thing with golden eagles. Golden eagles will kill deer and pronghorn antelope.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so this was an open country species which had eyes. Your Texas whitetail has eyes as big as a bighorn sheep, yeah? And it was able to. So you had a wide open landscape. When people came and were confronted by these mega carnivores, these huge bears, lions, and so on, they began burning the landscape where they could burn it, and then they settled there. Because on burnt landscape, they were safe from the predators. And by the way, they lived a miserable life for 1,500 years. After that, they developed a miracle weapon, which was which was a sharp cutting blade mounted on a detachable spear. You put poison on it, very severe poison. They were killing mammoth on the spot, several at a time. They were very, very, very severe. That's the Clovis culture. Yeah?
Yes.
Also, the Heskett culture is another one that they produced unbelievable cutting tools. The Heskett culture is thin, long knives that were obviously drenched in poison, most likely aconitum, and that were used. Later on, you had the Folsom culture, which was also something very similar to the Clovis, and the fishtail culture in South America. And by the way, with these miracle weapons, they killed out the large fauna within 500 years, completely. But you know what happens now? The vegetation grows, and you have conflagrations. You have huge fires. You have to counterburn. You have to learn how to handle vegetation so it's safe for you. And the North American Indians and the South American Indians became greatest experts. Yes. And so they burned in order to make the vegetation subservient to human needs. They became some of the greatest horticulturists and great agriculturists. These were bright, bright people that were doing this, yeah? And by the time Columbus came to North America, you had a continent completely under human control. It was civilized, but it was also overpopulated. And wildlife was very, very, very scarce. The reason you had so much more wildlife was, of course, the Great Tragedy, because already in 1539, with the De Soto expedition, they brought diseases, and they began to spread diseases instantly. And native people became aware of it very, very quickly, and they fled just to get away from any contact with these Europeans. Imagine driving 500 pigs in front of you. That's what De Soto was doing. Yeah. Because the preceding expedition in 1527 by Cabeza de Vaca, who was second in command, and he reported back, one of the problems they had was getting enough food in the first expedition. Yeah, people were dying of hunger. So the second expedition thought they were going to fulfill that. They had 500 pigs moving along with them at any one time, and they spread their diseases like you wouldn't believe it. The minimum is that 56 million American natives died. The more likely figure is that 120 million died. Yeah? And wildlife exploded as a consequence. Buffalo, the real beginning is about 1635, and their maximum extent they reached about 1775, certainly in Pennsylvania. That is, then they began to shrink already. Yeah. But the maximum, this is the image of the landscape full of wildlife, full of buffalo, full of passenger pigeons, is a consequence of the death of North American natives by the millions. So, for instance, the passenger pigeon, you had, the best explanation is that once the nut gardens, the fruit trees and everything else, well, your eastern hardwood forest is a nut garden. Yeah. Once they became available, the pigeons got into it, and your genetics tells us that this was a very rapid expansion. And they expanded into the billions. And so basically what was the biomass that once walked as native people on Earth became passenger pigeons in the sky. Horrible.
Yes. Yeah, passenger pigeons is one of those species that everybody understands.
But you see, the passenger pigeon was a rare bird at the time Columbus landed in North America. It's a rare bird in the food archaeological sites. Yeah, very, very rare bird. If it had been as common as that, it would have been everywhere. No, it wasn't.
But understanding these ebbs and flows is
but
at
you
the
see,
core of understanding our world.
That's right. And it gets even better because one of the papers thinks that the release on the vegetation that happened was so massive that, because in other words, the natives had suppressed it, was so massive that it sucked out a lot of CO2 out of the air and caused the little ice age. That's not my theory. That's one theory I cannot defend or explain, but this is one theory out there. Yeah, it could very well be true.
Sure.
They were trying to make the point that this was, in fact, the first example of man-caused climatic change. Nothing to fool around with little ice age.
The understatement. I'd say of the century, but longer than that.
That's right.
Of a millennia.
That's right. But you see, you should read, because it's so funny, the Alvarez Núñez Cabeza de Vaca was a nobleman and a Spanish officer, very successful, and he was a falconer. And the emperor that he reported to, Charles V, was a passionate falconer and a hunter. And so, of course, the emperor was interested what he saw naturally. Now, Cabeza de Vaca begins in Florida, goes all the way to 8 years to Mexico. He doesn't see a single alligator. He doesn't see a single coyote or wolf. He doesn't see any grizzly bear. He knows about black bear and puma. He doesn't see any. He sees no elk. He sees no javelina. When the natives in Florida, he describes, when hunting deer, they took along water and wood, because where there was water and wood, there were no deer. Can you imagine as a hunter what that means? How rare deer were? Yet Cabeza de Vaca says there are 3 kinds of deer in Florida, and he's 100% correct. They still are there.
Yes.
3 different deer, whitetails, yeah? That's how keen an observer he was, you see. So he now describes, for the benefit of the king, all the huntable birds, like the blue heron, the egrets, and so on and so forth. But he doesn't mention the eagle once. With a huge population of people on the land, every eagle has its feathers torn out. He doesn't see a single eagle. He doesn't see a single vulture. Well, if you have deer in such small populations, and only deer, and nothing else, yeah, when you don't find a single turkey in Florida, it's the DeSoto expedition that meets the first turkey in Louisiana, yeah. That was the continent you looked at. It was very, very well used by people. And that matches the archaeological data. Go ahead.
And these vast changes over time.
Vast changes,
that
right.
Disease that then sweeps over this
that's right.
continent.
That's right. But you
Changes
see,
things.
for 12,000 years, people changed the continent till the Europeans came. And then in rapid-fire fashion, you whiplashed the whole continent. There is no natural ecosystem anywhere left in North America because of that.
Sobering. To wrap up on the North American model, does it need to change?
Well,
for the next 50 years?
You asked a good question. I think what you've been doing in the past is good, and it would continue as long as you accept socially that wildlife can be in the service of human beings, that it can be consumed, that it is a product and a harvest of the land. As long as you have that, and as long as you think that it's right and proper to treat everybody in our democracy as an equal, so that every citizen who is no longer not a criminal, etc., can get wildlife for their own use, it will remain and retain.
Sustainable use of natural resources.
And as long as you have wildlife, your Second Amendment will stay. But if you lose your wildlife, it isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Well, I'm trying to gather the words to summarize our time together here. I feel like I want you to come back, number one. or I'm coming to you.
Yes, you can.
I should.
Do you realize that the Germans have sent the TV crews to film me?
Yeah.
Because I'm taking such strong stands on the wolf issue in Europe, yeah?
Yes.
Oh, they're
They told me
publishing
about
my
that.
stuff all the time.
I'm coming to you, and we're gonna hunt. We're gonna
Absolutely.
go hunting. I want to thank you for a life that was dedicated to these ideas, to pursuing them, to articulating them, and for coming here and doing both of those things, because I think this is an incredibly important conversation. I think your ideas are not only important for your generation, but for every single one that comes after it. So I don't think thank you's quite enough, but that's all I have for right now.
But thank you, and thank you for this opportunity.
No.
I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. That's all. Episode 96 in the books. Thank you to Jim, Colonel Tom, and Valerius for gracing us with your presence on the podcast. Those are three gentlemen I never thought I'd get to sit down with and put those in a time capsule for myself and hopefully for you to go back and listen to if you ever need a little inspiration of what you might want to do with your career or with your life outdoors. So thank you for, again, sticking through all 4 volumes of THC's Best Of. We're going to get back to the regular show, Phil. You excited about that? Huh?
I'm excited to see what you have planned.
Yeah, you don't even know yet, do you?
No.
I've been, I got a whole Word document full of guest ideas and topic ideas and segment ideas and all these crazy things for 2020. You know, this we joked that we were just the substitute teacher putting the movie on, but while we were taking a bit of a break from our normal show, we were getting down to work on 2020. We want to bring you the best podcast possibly can bring you. So in the meantime, hit us up on iTunes, wherever you listen. Give us a 5-star review and a good written review. That really helps the show. And do anything else you can to let people know about what we do here at THC. In the meantime, we'll be working our asses off to make it better for you, make it entertaining, make it informational. So we'll see you in the brand new year, in 2020. Next week. Bye.
Stay here too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven. Sitting as the bar stool starts to grow roots. I'm feeling like an old worn-out pair of shoes. Oh, tell me what is it that I should do?
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. Hey, everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer is going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24th, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.